Well, well, well. It's ThursdAGE.
Is it really?
It is. No lie. One of my favorite days. Look at this. We now have sound. Hey, folks, says Charlotte. Nice. I think people can hear and see us. Well, almost see us. We're gonna give people a little time to mosey on up. Chris asks, will we get vision in a moment? You will have a vision. A radiant vision.
Or me, one or the other. We'll push a button. We'll see what happens.
The voices, says Stan. The voices are back.
So 15% chance of radiant vision.
Ooh. Or visual radiation.
That's just light, Troy.
That is just light. That is indeed. Wow, we've got people. We got people from all over the world. Derek, let's see. Derek says hello. Philip saying howdy do. They're talking some XCOM Final Fantasy Tactics.
I mean, you guys do you.
Are you much of a video game guy?
So that's an interesting question. I love the concept of video games and I love specific video games. I do not have a lot of time to play video games. So my needs are very specific. So for example, there's the Kingdom Rush tower defense games, which are available on Steam. There are 3 or maybe 4 of them. I love those things. I love those things to death. And one of the reasons is that I can pop at a level, try and get an achievement, try and beat one specific set of challenges in 5 to 8 minutes, and then walk away.
Yeah.
Close it. I've been a huge fan of pretty much all the Mario games. I would say Mario Galaxy is maybe the exception, and therefore it's the one that got a sequel. But going way back to Super Mario and et cetera, et cetera. And I've got Mario Odyssey loaded up on my Switch in the living room, and I haven't touched it in the entire pandemic. And I can't tell you why. I think because anytime I've got free time, I don't have energy. So, there have been specific games. There was a specific version of Gauntlet that was available. I don't remember. It was Gauntlet Dark something that I and some friends really got into. But I really enjoy games that I can play with my friends. That for me is a big part of gaming. So I do not
agree. Yeah.
much get into solo games, brief things like Kingdom Rush being the big exception.
Stan has a question. Will I get superpowers? And I don't think you'll get superpowers, but you'll become a wizard if you're exposed.
So today specifically, you're going to get a lair, which is even better than superpowers.
You are going to get, yes, exactly. You'll get all of the real estate a villain or wizard or whatever, I suppose, could want. But here I'll go Abra. I don't really know much. That's a good magic word.
I think it's Abra Sesame.
Abra Sesame. Well, that wasn't it.
That is not what I was expecting.
That wasn't it. Sorry. But a little bun fight.
I can make a game called Bunny Punch if that's what you need, Troy.
I do. I want to have Bunny. I want to call it soft slap fight. A little pat fight. Here we go. We have fighting hairs. Yes, that was a little mix up of my magical powers. But Owen, hey, how are you?
I'm pretty good. I'm doing all right.
Good to see your face, friend. It has been a minute. We took the last week off, but
Yes.
Here we are this week, and boy, oh boy, you have picked something pretty amazing for us, haven't you?
Yeah, we're gonna go over layers, and it's gonna be a little different than some of the other stuff we've gone over, because layers is very much a book for game masters. Brian F. Irving points out bunnies and burrows is already a thing, right? Ed Stan says bunny punch, the wascally game of lagomorphic combat. See, that's what we need there.
There we go.
Lagomorphic combat. That's exactly what we're looking for. And lagomorphs are going to be an option in the Fantasy Age core rulebook. So be prepared. So Layers is a very special book. It's a book that is very much designed for game masters. And I think it increases the total fun of players quite a bit. But through offering new opportunities and challenges, and my favorite addition to Fantasy Age, the lair stunt or location stunt. Apparently it's stuttering for some people. Now that could just be me. I could just be stuttering. I'm having an under-caffeinated day, so
I can't really speak to that. I am my powers only extend so far to the realm of bunny fighting.
I mean,
yeah,
if you had to pick something, bunny fighting,
yes. Summon a bunny punch. All right, so I'm going to show off this cover. Let me get there.
Yeah, the cover's great. And it has a specific take on ghouls as let's say a jaw-dropping design, very specifically. And there's a ghoul prince layer in the book. So when we're going over the book, I'm going to spend just a ton of time sort of at the very beginning of it, because after that, it is the layers. And here's the thing about the layers in Layers. These are not exactly campaign settings, and they are not exactly adventures. What they are a specific themed layer with the maps and the henchmen and the main villain and location stunts and adventure seeds for a game master to be able to pick up and use and modify as needed. And as has been pointed out, new monsters. And it's a little different from a lot of adventure books or a lot of location books. It's not unusual for a location book to give a location and be very, very dry, right? I mean, here they could say, here is, the Green Chapel where the Green Knight hangs out, and they just give you the map and the history, and here's the Green Knight and the Green Chapel, and that's about it. There's a lot more in Layers. We assume that these are places that are going to support adventures, and we even give ideas for what those adventures are going to be. And if you are a very sandbox kind of GM, you can just drop in the layer and watch your players go to town, and they will do most of the work for you.
What
you can also use
heck?
them as elements of a specific campaign, or if you're like, I really want, wow, Layers got small and narrow.
Did it? Looking good. All right, we'll fix that. Pretty.
It's like we put layers on Laffy Taffy.
We did, yeah. Layers on a diet. What in the heck?
That's a ghoul.
Oh.
And that big thing in the background with an accident shoulder, also a ghoul. And
they
are jumped up on the wall, ghoul.
Oh, they are. They have a distinct look.
They do. They really do. And I always feel like they sound like they're talking with marbles in their mouth, which may reduce from the gravitas a little bit. But
yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
But they are a specific take, an effort to have something that draws from some of the other sources for ghouls, so that they aren't just a retread of things that you've seen before. And they're written up with a whole little ghoul kingdom area within. So when we're getting to this, I'm going to spend a lot of time at the beginning, and I want to tell you sort of what the setup is, but I don't want to go into a lot of detail about the different layers themselves, because that would be spoilers. And I want GMs, to be able to use this stuff and unleash it on people. But I do want to talk a little bit about the process of creating layers. And this was the book that was coming out when I came on board. So I didn't have anything to do with it, but I spent a lot of time sinking my fingers into it and getting a feel for it, because it was the thing I was about to have to talk about. while the authors for Lairs were given some strong guidelines and guidance on what we wanted, they were also encouraged to get creative and do their own stuff. So you see that there's a big, long list of very different people there, and each of them did one of the layers. So this isn't a book where one person did every set of monster stat blocks and one person did all the map sketches and one person did all the background. Each of those creators, each of those writers and designers put together a layer start to finish for the draft, and then obviously Jack Norris, our developer, got them all together, and they were professionally edited and all that. The point is that they are very much, each one comes from a specific mental place, and they might not all make sense in the same campaign, or if they are all in the same campaign, they might be in radically different places. So this was a effort to show some people what you can do with Fantasy Age beyond just maybe saying, okay, there's a castle and there's a dungeon and there's a dark forest, and between the three there are bandit-ridden trails, and that's the adventure. One of these is a interdimensional university of strange knowledge. And that's a very different kind of place. So you'll see that it talks there, the table of contents, talks about assessing the threat, what you need, a final word on how this is put together, then location and layer stunts, and that's where we're going to be spending most of our times. And then I'm happy to hear at this page go over what the various layers are. So we've got the Valley of the Whispering Titans, the University of Tabak, Hell's Orchestra, Temple of the Stone Oath. If you scroll up just a little bit, there's one on the top right that we missed. The Night Market, which is one of my favorites. It is creepy and fun. Madness Under the Sea, the Peak of the Mithril Dragon, and the Ghoul Prince, which is the one we were talking about. So these are all very different kinds of places. And one of the things I really like about them is that each one talks about what level of character you should sort of expect to be able to operate in there on an adventuring level. And I say that because if they're too low level, they're just going to get wiped out. If they're too high level, it's not really an adventure. And there are exceptions to that, right? There are things you can do in the university, for example, that you can do just by wandering around and seeing what's going on and doing investigation. But it is very much assumes that the challenges are in a specific range, so that as the game master, you can say, look forward to what you're going to be doing, what level are these characters going to be, and plan ahead and say, well, they're about to be 8th level. I don't have an idea for what to do with 8th level. What can I introduce as a linchpin of the next arc of this campaign, and pick a layer that it may be the capstone of an adventure. You might be trying to get to the layer, but a lot of these, like the Night Market, you can just start the campaign. Here it is. This is a group's layer. This is their place, and they've got the home turf advantage. So in that regard, I think it works great. It's almost a location bestiary, right? It's almost a monster book, except instead of just monsters, it's places. And that's just not something I see very much in the RPG market, especially not with them being, each one is self-contained and you can pick them up and drop them anywhere in a campaign setting. They give you ideas of what kind of region you can put them in. But again, you can take a lot of these and just place them in any campaign, in any setup. So let's go ahead and move on from the table of contents.
There's
this is all put together. Great.
You may hear some noise. I've got a large truck has decided to ram into my home repeatedly. So
okay, well that's not great.
My lair, as it were. Now it's the garbage truck, but yeah,
your lair. Yeah,
my lair.
Right. Locations and layer stunts. So this is not a huge section, but wow, is it great! And I have talked about this over and over and over. How much I love this in addition to the game, and how much this is a set of things that I think every GM should just, even if you just look at this section and think about what put together. So I want to talk about this at some length. So there are location-based stunt costs, so that you can take existing stunts and change their cost based on the environment. And they give some specific examples here. So they might say, hey, if you're doing an encounter on a slippery floor, or your people are fighting on a angled moss-covered hill or whatever, you can take the knock prone stunt and reduce the cost by 1. And you can say using skirmish moves people by an additional yard. So there you're taking existing stunts and just saying, hey, because of this, they're cheaper or they're more effective. So that is not adding something totally new to the game, but it does really change, especially when you're talking about lower point stunts. It does really change the feel of a game, because if you have a fight in some place, people frequently go, well, knocking someone prone, I would rather do an extra die of damage, whatever. But when it becomes cheaper and cheaper and cheaper, they're like, okay, well, if I knock them down, they're going to have to either fight from the ground and I can more easily stab them to death, or they're going to have to waste a move to get up. And either way, I've got a advantage that is more worth it being 1 point cheaper. And again, with skirmish, right? I can knock them farther. I'm guaranteed to get a certain distance if I pull it off. So,
hey, Owen, real quick, Philip mentioned something that I think is really true, and I've noticed it at first when I began working at Green Ronin. I would, I've got the library and I've amassed my library over time as I've kind of explored, and we do cram way more into a smaller book than many do in larger page, like in larger numbered books. Like it's kind of remarkable.
Yeah, it really is. Part of that is to try and give you the tools instead of just giving you the finished product. So here we talk, and this is a great example of it. We give you location stunts, and then we talk about different types of location stunts, and we give you examples. But we don't try and say, hey, there are 106 possible location stunts. Here's all of them, and we assume that these are the only ones you're going to use, so we have to list absolutely everything. Instead, we're giving you a toolkit, and we're giving you some instructions on how to use that toolkit, and then we're telling you to go to town.
I like it. Leaving room for the player to kind of add their own creativity and fill in the gaps.
Yeah, the player, the GM, should be able to get in there and have a good time. There is, for Fantasy Age in particular, there has maybe been a too strong lean on toolkits and not enough fast food and finished adventures, or whatever you want to make however far do we want to stretch that analogy. Maybe we need Dungeon Dash to drop off a prepared adventure for you a little more often. But we can look at that and make those adjustments. The other nice thing about the location-based stunts is that they talk about not just making things cheaper, but increasing costs, or having costs be changed, but with a side effect. So they talk about a mystically charged area allows fast casting for 1 fewer stunts, but the volatile energies increase the cost of lasting spell stunts by 1 stunt point.
Where are you at?
Those are just all examples of how you can alter, change, put in side effects, whatever, based on the terrain that you're setting up, and to give the game master a roadmap on how you can take stunts and some general rules, right? Stunt points are never reduced below 0. Even 0 point stunts require you to roll doubles before you can be used. And the GM should alert players to modified stunt costs when an encounter begins or when an event occurs that create the modifiers. So, for example, if you all are fighting in front of a dam and everything is fine and normal, and then the dam breaks and suddenly the area is flooded, and you're like, by the way, knocking people prone's easier, at least this round, they've been informed that there's this different situation. So those are simple stunt costs, location-based stunts, to take the existing stunts and modify them one way or the other. That is always my first go-to whenever I am running the game on what to look at. Hey, is there something in this environment, anything in this environment, that could make this easier, right? And one of the things I frequently do is I will watch movies, and you will see things like someone's trying to run away from pursuers down an alley, and they just grab some boxes and knock them over to slow down their opponent. That's a great example of a location-based stunt, right? Spend 1 stunt point and force people behind you to make a check, to take a test, maybe a dexterity test, in order to get past it, or they're slowed down for a round. There's a lot of visual stuff that happens in comics and television and movies, especially, that you can easily translate, and you can tell people, hey, this is a crowded alley. So all of these things that you've seen in movies are possibilities here. And if you've got the right kind of group, and if you're the sort of GM that likes to do it, you can even say, hey, if you guys get stunt points, you can pitch stunts based on what this location is like, right? Like maybe if you say, hey, you're on the dock and there are nets full of crates everywhere, and it just does not occur to you that someone could cut a rope and drop a crate on a bad guy, but then they can say, ooh, I got stunt points. Could I? Is there a rope nearby that I could cut and do this? Or for that matter, if you've been watching Pirates of the Caribbean, right? Can I cut a rope and get flung up into the air to escape from here? Because otherwise I'm going to get killed. Not every GM and not every group is good with that sort of extemporaneous, off-the-cuff, ad hoc stunt. But for people who like that kind of thing, the stunt system is a great way to put some power in your players' hands and say, I'm the GM, I'm the final arbiter, I'll decide if it works or not, but you can always pitch stunts to me, and if they make sense, I'll tell you what the stunt cost is to try and pull it off.
Excellent. Hey, I want to say ciao to our friend Slit, who's gonna put a delivery in another property. We may or may not be. I hope we are, my friend, when you return. So now, where are we headed?
So we're staying, like I said, we're spending a lot of time just here at the beginning.
Okay.
There's a big conversation here on dramatic license and improvised stunts. I just went over a lot of that. There's the location stunt element table, and that is basically just a list of potential location stunts that you can then use however they make sense in a specific area. So for example, it says entangled. Characters are entangled or otherwise restricted by something in the location, and that's 3 stunt points. So we're not saying these are all available all the time. We're saying if you are wanting to add some location stunts and you need a roadmap, you can look at these and pick one, and you can say, ooh, entangled. We were just talking about, the crowded alley or the dock that has all of the cargo nets and stuff. I can use the entangled stunt in this location to represent this thing. And then you don't have to have hazards. You don't have to have mystic fonts. It's just a list of things that you can take that are sort of the generic game mechanics of a location stunt for you, the GM, to flavor however you want. And one of those is specifically to be able to have new areas or edit the encounter, right? The action alters location, creating an important detail that has no immediate effect, may be used later. Flammable oil spill, a hole in the wall, etc. So that's a lot of the kind of stuff I was talking about as we go on, and it talks about improvised stunts and hidden stunts, planned stunts. That is all for generic location stunts. And I think even if you buy this book and none of the actual locations in it appeal to you, even if you just use it for, hey, I want the monsters and there are some traps and there are some stat blocks for bad guys, but I'm going to take all that and put it, maybe you've got a big vampire castle called Crow Loft that you're going to move all this over to and adapt from a different game system. That's fine. Still read through the location stunts and the layer stunts. And then layer stunts, it goes into our special location stunts usable only by adversaries within their layer or some other area they dominate control. Layer stunts are really powers for villains or adversaries, don't have to be villains. So for example, if you want to say, hey, this is the necromancer's summoning circle, and while he is here, he can summon undead. You guys can't do it. It's not your summoning circle. He can't do it somewhere else. He needs the big summoning circle. But when you're here, when he has the stunt points, he can summon up creatures. And
our buddy Ren's, has noticed that there are many hot ghouls hanging out in this book, and asks why. And not that they're complaining, but they're just marveling at the fact that we do have quite a number.
Yeah, well, and they're hot until that line down the middle of their chin splits open, and then you see what they look like.
Yeah.
So if they stub their toe, they're not as pretty because that yell is. So that was very much Jack, the previous developer for this line. Jack Norris had a very specific desire to take a very different take on ghouls, and one that you may have run into in some Pulp Fiction or some things that are less mainstream than a lot of TTRPGs run on. And I am a big fan of that same aesthetic, but in this case, I had nothing to do with it. I think ghouls are frequently overplayed as basically just super zombies, and I think there's a lot more to them. And there are fictional stories that have things like, kingdoms of ghouls underground and ghoul sorcerers and whole ghoul lineages, so that the ghoul, rather than just being a reanimated corpse, becomes a underground grave themed species that can have their own culture. The split chin is not entirely a deal breaker. Yeah, that is probably going to be the quote. And that split chin is a great example of something that you can add in Fantasy Age that does not necessarily have to have game stats about it, right? We were talking 2 weeks ago about you can take goblins and make them look like spiders with little fezzes, right? We even got art from Stan out of it. And that is an extreme example. But you can also take something like a ghoul or a vampire. There are some really freaky vampire legends worldwide and in various movies where people have tried to reimagine vampires that you can look at. I had a undead at one point that people thought was just a particularly buff zombie that had a rib cage that could burst out of its flesh and be an additional mouth. And it was called a grave maw, and I just made it up out of nowhere.
Alarming.
And
That's great.
that wasn't game mechanically any different from its fist punch, but the players didn't know that. So they had this very different reaction to the grave maw's chest opening up and trying to bite them, because it's not something they'd seen before. Just in the last Tuesday, my wife ran a game where our characters came up over a hill, and we're second level characters, and there was a field of 50 skeletons that all their heads snapped and looked at us at the same time. And the fact that their heads all snapped and looked at us at once, as players, freaked us out, even though that does not have any game mechanical effect to it. And then when some of them turned out to be different, to have a stronger stat block, we were like, oh, well, maybe if we kill all the different ones, maybe they all looked at us at once, because that is a clue that they are all actually being controlled by just 2 or 3 of them. And as far as I know, that's not the case, but we as players filled that detail with so much more potential horror and concern and tactical consideration than my wife actually put out there. She just said, here's this thing happens, it's unexpected, you haven't seen it before. And we're forming up a fighting line to make sure that our anti-undead priest can have the room to put these things down by the dozen. That's exactly the sort of thing that, a ghoul with a split chin that comes open, or you can do anything, right? If what you want, the other thing you can do with these things, and this ties into layers a little bit, is that if there is some theme that you don't like for whatever reason, you can almost always change it. Like, there are a lot of books, and Green Ronin is not immune to this, especially if you go back to stuff from 10, 20 years ago, that basically say, hey, here are orcs, and they are terrible and savage, and you're going to be killing them. And then someone comes along quite reasonably and says, hey, why are we taking this sapient, sentient, humanoid species and writing them up as universally bad guys? Are we suggesting that there are ethnicities that we should treat as purely the other and destroy? And then you begin to wonder, okay, wait, what has been in this that I have not needed to think about, that other people are pointing out, now I want to reconsider? So if you get something like that, and you're like, well, I like this adventure, but this adventure purely involves these people who, arguably we have broken into their homeland, and we have declared that we're all going to kill them, and we have special bonuses to take them down because that was written into our game rules, and just do away with the orc part entirely. And there are a couple of ways you could do that. If you want to make it weird, if you want to remove it from the realm of things that are people going to compare to the normal world entirely, that can be a great place for, and this is drawing back to layers a little bit, to look at stuff like ad hoc descriptions and layer feats And you can build a whole mythology with just a few rules. So you can say, look, what you're fighting aren't humanoid anythings. There is, in fact, a evil faction of villainous metal rings, and they come in sizes 3 inches to 2 feet in diameter, and they're between 6 and 12 rings, and they sparkle. And anytime you kill one, other rings near it are capable of having bolts of fire come off of it, and no one has a name for them because they're not talking to us, and they are transmuting the entire region where they are into a vast field of glass, so that the trees and the creatures and the land is all turning to glass, and they're spreading. That still can give you that classic invasion of creatures we don't understand feel. You can have a border on the keep lands and have to go defend it. But when the players get there, instead of going, oh, it's orcs, we kill them, they're like, wait, there are 12 different metal rings hovering in the air, and when we kill one, blast of fire. What are we dealing with?
Yeah, that's wild. Right.
But that stat block is still just, okay, we've taken a regular monster stat block, we have given it a new description, we have created one new layer power that only applies when we put one of them down, and everything else is just a change in the description.
You know what I would do? If I wanted to, I mean, if I wanted to replace orcs or say something that was problematic, let me show you what I would do.
So, I mean, you got to know, as a Ronin, suggesting that bunnies are going to fight each other, that's pretty problematic. That's almost as bad as not liking cheese in this company.
Oh, truth. Well, I'm just saying. I may have picked up that particular GIF from one Crystal Fraser. So just gotta say, yeah.
Crystal, of course, is her own special.
That's critter. True. That's true.
Do not assume that the slack that is cut to her for bunny fighting applies to you.
That's actually pretty. Yeah, that's wiser words have not. I may not get away with the same, but I will try.
All right. Okay. And so this, having gone on that big whole long thing, we're looking here at summoning followers in the location and layer stunts. These are just ways you can take what we give you and reskin it to be whatever you need. The idea of the Fantasy Age books is not to say that there is any one true way to game, and if you're not doing it this way, you're doing it wrong, and we would never allow you to play that character, and these can't be your villains. We really want to say, hey, here's a bunch of stuff we think you might like, and then feel free to do pretty much anything else with it that you and your group are comfortable with. Without feeling like you're doing it in any way wrong, right? There's no one true way to role play or come together with a group. I play with people who treat this as seriously as Shakespearean theater and take it very, very, very seriously, and don't want ridiculous things or Easter eggs or such in their game, because that ruins the fun for them. And other groups, sometimes including the same people, who are more than happy to turn everything into Ghostbuster quotes and Lord of the Rings references and Monty Python routines. That can vary by group, and it can vary by game session. It can vary by mood. And we don't want to reduce your fun. We want to give you tools to take that fun in whatever direction is fun for you.
I've got something to share here in a minute, but please do continue.
The word fun is losing all meaning for me. And then after that, this is a series of layers. So if you go to the next page, you'll see The Valley of the Whispering Titans by Jessie Decker. I'm not going to go into any real detail about this because I don't want to spoil it for people. Again, the art is great. The art is one of the things I love about this. There's a little tiny sidebar that talks about this adversary layer and the adventure surrounding them suit player characters of levels 4 to 7. That's what I was talking about. Suit player characters of levels 4 to 7. If you have a desire to let people be way tougher for whatever reason than the foes assume, and you've got 12th level characters, go for it. It also says groups with specialization spells or other abilities pertaining to animals, wilderness survival, and tracking may find many of the challenges of the valley easier to overcome. Which also tells you as the GM that specializations, spells, or other abilities pertaining to animals, wilderness survival, and tracking will be relevant and engaging. So when you're reading these little sidebars, if you've had a Beastmaster character who has not had to have anything to do with animals because you've exclusively been throwing floating piles of Olympic rings at them because some guy on the internet said that would be fun, you can look at these as what kind of themes are going to be in this layer so that you know what players might have been missing that you can put in there. And like I said, beyond that, right, we're basically done with our review of layers. We can spin through some of the art if you want, but or the maps. But at that point, this is a series of things for a GM to use to freak out and delight and frighten players. And that's one of the reasons why we did this book pretty much last, is because I knew that I didn't want to cover most of the book, but I really wanted to cover the concept of the book and the fact that it's got adventure seeds and that it's got the layer and the location stunts and that chart of stunt ideas. Those are all really powerful tools, and they are even more powerful in the hands of someone that has these adventures to use them in.
I'm frantically downloading something from a mutual friend of ours. So you'll excuse me if I seem a little.
So Jason Waltman is here, and he has been specifically talking about the orphanage reference I made a bit ago.
Yeah.
And he's got a specific take on it, where if you've got a problem with an orphanage and a thieves guild connected to it, and there is something that turns into people into zombies and it all goes bad. If people want to read the comments, he's got a long tie on it. Then he comes up with, can we speak about building an encounter next week? I actually think we can. I think talking about building an encounter is a great idea for next week's topic, unless we already have one.
No, I think that's great too, but what are you talking about? I've just got the sense of humor of a 5-year-old, and so I explain yourself, Slit. I refuse to bring that foulness to this. I mean, no, you know me. I start out foul. Hey, I'm going to let's see, where did it go? Our friend Stan is hanging out, and he's I want this game. I do. 1 second. It's pretty good. It's pretty darn good.
I am now seeing what you're uploading.
Yeah.
If only Stan knew someone who was into game design or himself had a long, storied, award-winning track record of designing games. I feel like that illustration and a short description of gameplay is a winner for a Kickstarter.
I do too. Yeah. Would you make it a like a card style game?
So I would be super. I mean, the obvious answer is yes, you do as a card game. Another direction to take it would be something like a board game. I would be super tempted to try and make Bunny Punch a dice game.
Yeah.
And off the top of my head, I can't tell you exactly how I would do it. There's just something very kinetic about throwing dice. And, maybe we can make it a dice game that's half dice game and half curling, where you are all chunking dice into the bunny pit to try and hit other people's dice off of the various targets. And then your dice have special maneuvers or values or whatever. But that is absolutely a great illustration.
Yeah.
And the Bafo sound effect is particularly good. Although I can't let my wife see it because one of those bunnies is crying.
Oh,
so, yeah. See, one of those is little bunny Foo-Foo, and he's been picking up field mice and bopping them on the head.
That is true. Very true. So encounter building or building encounters. We'll talk about that next week. Is there a particular tome that we will reference? Are we at the end of our tomage?
We are at the moment at the end of our tomage. Now we will probably talk about how to draw from various different tomes. So, how you can look at layers for a layout, what kind of concerns are involved, drawing for the bestiary, reskinning things. I might suggest grabbing rules from the Fantasy Age companion. So we might well, we have been talking about all the vegetables of Fantasy Age, and now it's time to show you how to combine them into a salad bar.
I like it. Oh, I do love a salad bar. It's been a long time. I don't think do we do salad bars anymore?
Not only do I not know that salad bars are a thing anymore, but the biggest buffet restaurant conglomerate in North America has gone into bankruptcy. So, like the local
Yeah.
Furs is not just closed; it's closed forever. And I
Yeah.
get it. I don't. If it were open, I don't know that I would eat there.
No, I didn't eat there when it was open. I'm
I
not a big
did. I did.
buffet guy. Yeah.
I have always been a buffet guy. There's something kind of immediate and freeing and decision free of a buffet, right? I don't have to look at a menu, and we don't have to worry about if this food's going to take longer to cook than that food.
You just
Um,
right. Yeah. Yep. Yep.
yeah,
Yep.
it's hot, it's ready right now, but
So
it's
I love
also
about a salad bar
open in the
too.
air. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
mean, I don't want to have anybody make any misconceptions that I'm healthy by any stretch. We're talking like the most cheese and the biggest, all of the dressing on a very limited amount of vegetables and all the
yeah,
other
and
stuff.
the best salad bars are the ones that allow you to make a salad the worst option in the place.
Oh, you know what? Here's some salad monster. Yeah. That's a me. Let's see. Actually, Chris has something interesting. Could you do a roundup of the scenario modules available for Fantasy Age?
So we did that a little bit in a show when we were first starting this. We at least touched on them. But I can look and see if there's more that we can cover on that. I really think,
Yeah,
yeah,
exactly, Derek. Exactly.
that comment is exactly the issue.
Yeah.
There are some. I don't want necessarily ThursdAGE to be exclusively Fantasy Age, right? Because it's not Fantasy Age, it's ThursdAGE. So there may well be some books I want to look at from other lines and talk about how they can be combined and such. Although I do like doing encounters for Fantasy Age for next week.
Well, that's interesting, Owen. We have largely branded this, as a Fantasy Age stream, but you're
Yeah,
right. It's ThursdAGE, and that is interesting. We should, yeah, you're right. I think we should expand and potentially even bring on some guests from the other, Modern Age and Blue Rose and
yeah. I mean, the hop from Fantasy Age to using material from Dragon Age or Blue Rose is short. The hop to use stuff from Modern Age is actually still pretty short, honestly. Yeah, so someone said using Modern Age monsters in Fantasy Age. Yeah, for example, that's a perfect example of the sort of thing we think should discuss. I also think there are some interesting options if you were to do a specific kind of heist version of Fantasy Age that maybe draws from shows like The Watch or Rat Queens, the comic, or whatever. Do that and add the churn mechanic from the expansion. I think could be very interesting. So I'd like to talk about that. That just takes some careful planning in advance. Would you consider an episode about what you'd like to do for Fantasy Age in the future? We'd absolutely consider that. The timing of it is the only real thing, because I kind of don't want to take away from the thing we know we're doing in Fantasy Age in the future, which is the core rule book, which continues to be the main thrust of trying to make sure we get it right, because it is going to be the anchor, the keystone, the capstone, the focal point of the next wave of Fantasy Age stuff. But I am still in favor of talking about it. I did. Someone said it's Owen's Shadowfinder concept. That is very specifically designed for Starfinder and Paizo D20 stuff. That doesn't mean that a game like that could not possibly be done using age mechanics. In fact, I think age mechanics would work for it really well. And on my blog, I've actually been talking a little bit about doing something kind of like that for the Age Creators Alliance once that launches. So there are lots of possibilities. And I certainly appreciate people asking these questions here. I'll remind you that if you ever have a question, if you wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning and you think, ooh, I have an idea for a show, or I have a question that I'd like them to answer on Fantasy Age, you can always drop a line to letsplay@greenrunning.com. I presume Troy has his alerts turned off, so it won't wake him up at 3 a.m.
Oh, no. When I get a email from somebody in this very specific audience for ThursdAGE, a Thursday alien, a klaxon rings, everyone in the neighborhood is just roused out of bed. They all are just like, who is it? Who is it? And then I read it to them. How do you spell let's play at greenronin.com?
Yeah.
You spell that LETS play at greenronin.com. Green, like the color green, Ronin, as in, Ronin, Green Ronin. If they were green, they would be Green Ronin, and .com, and com is COM. Is that helpful, Ren? Oh, what's this?
I mean, Shadow Finder was an idea of mine that goes has its roots all the way back in D20 Modern, and Modern Age is actually really well set up to do that sort of urban fantasy. Yes, all lowercase, no punctuation for Let's Play.
Oh, yeah. But you know what? Case doesn't matter in emails anymore, but definitely no punctuation.
I lost my train of thought. I'm flapped.
No way.
No,
Is it because of this KFC and Chickenzilla monster to crush Taco Bell Mecca? Thing that Jason's got cooking?
That is absolutely what it is. That totally. And here's the thing: you can't trust Taco Bell, because we know in the franchise wars, Taco Bell ends up winning, and then all restaurants will be Taco Bell. So
that's right. Yeah,
that's the problem with prequels, really. All right, so that is my rundown of layers, and I realized that I spent almost all that time focusing on the first 5 pages, but that's because the rest of it, I can't go into how great all of it is without spoiling it for players, and I don't want to do that. But I heartily recommend it for any GM, even as a guidebook. Now people are doing Taco Bell icons as a guidebook for what kind of information do you want for a big, interesting adventuring layer.
Yeah, I think that's great, and and it's always a real pleasure to just to see how deeply you can kind of bring us into this process in only a few pages. I think we only went about 8 pages. Yeah, that's great. I mean, that is really, really great, and I really enjoy it. And oh, look at that!
Did you see the new post from Stan?
No, is there a new post?
Yep, there's a new link for us, new art from Stan.
Well, off I go. Well, why don't we got about 5 minutes left. Why don't we wrap on tell us a story, Owen, a little 2-minute story.
All right, I will tell you a 2-minute story. In the 1990s, I was going to Gen Con on the regular, and TSR, which had already been bought by Wizards of the Coast at that point, would do delves. And these delves, they would have a giant, 5-foot by 5-foot map of a dungeon. They had it covered by pieces of paper until some group had gone to that particular area. And whenever anyone died, they would take a stick pin and they would put it in the big 5x5 map. And then they had 8 or 9 tables running all at the same time of people running their adventurers through it. And you all had pre-gens. And certain big rooms, had actual prizes for the players if you successfully defeated the villain in that room. And then there would be a new stick pin that would indicate that the villain was defeated. Well, I asked at one point, hey, if someone is killed, is that corpse still laying there? And since they wanted this to be an ongoing interactive experience, they're like, yeah, there are bodies everywhere you'll know where they are for the push pins. So when I got to play, and this was before I'd done more than a few magazine articles at best in the industry, I specifically convinced this group of strangers, no one I'd ever met before, that what we needed to do was go to the biggest room with the most death marks, because that's where all the dead players were, and we played every different pre-gen we could, so we would recognize who had what equipment. And so we could go there and grab the wands of fireball and the potions of healing and the magic arrows we only had one or two of off the corpses of the previous versions of ourselves in order to defeat the big bad guy. And that worked. The GM let us do that. And we had a great time. It was, I'm told, a little creepy, kicking over. We're subdividing our corpses into, hey, if you're in chainmail and have a shield, that's a cleric. All right, get all the clerics together. That's where all the. And we just churned through the gear of our own characters, because most of those characters had one or two things on them that was a one shot, but most of the one shots hadn't been used by previous groups, and so we killed them all, and we got a few actual physical prizes.
I love it. I love it. Well, we're going to show this first.
Dude, what is up with your chin? Hey, no body shaming.
I do kind of imagine them speaking through kind of just like a clapping, flapping, sort of a wet clap, if you will. Ugh.
Although what gets me is, dude, what's up with your elbows? Which is much creepier to me than his chin, right? He has a super cleft chin, great, but why does he have an extra thumb on his elbow?
Yeah, can you ever really get into the mind of an artist? Can you ever really know?
No, absolutely not.
You absolutely cannot, and who would want to? Thank you so much for that, Stan. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out with us on ThursdAGE. We really do have a blast. We really enjoy this quite a bit, and Owen is a delight and a treasure of a human being, and we will have to get into that knobby elbows thing. Oh, I see. He's got
Popeye elbows.
Popeye elbows. Okay. I like that. I like that a lot. Everybody, don't forget, if you've got questions, comments, you got ideas, things you want us to cover, send that note to letsplay@greenronin.com or give Owen a call in the wee hours of the morn. And my friend, Owen, I think we're done. Anything you'd like to share or say before we head out?
Yeah, ogres are like onions. They have layers. Nope, that's good. I think that is the perfect sign out.
That was it. I love it indeed. Ogres are like onions. They have layers. And with that, friends, have an excellent rest of your week and a phenomenal weekend. And then come back on Monday. We have Mutants and Mastermind Monday that we kick off right in this very same space. Like we sit in these very same chairs, take up this very same digital footprint. And you'll find us on all the places for Mutants and Masterminds Monday with Crystal Frazier, Steve Kenson, and myself, and then a cast of characters, and so much fun. It's a blast. So with that, we bid you all adieu, ciao, and take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, folks.